Welcome back to iReview. The hard truth is, most 22 LR shooters are relying on the wrong ammunition for the job. And it's not because they made a poor choice, it's because the numbers printed on the box don't tell the whole story. Muzzle velocity alone cannot predict terminal performance. To understand what actually happens on impact, we have to look at the data, ordnance gelatin, clothing barrier penetration, and how your specific barrel length dictates real-world results. In today's countdown, we are ranking 9 22 long rifle rounds based on hard ballistic evidence, not marketing hype. Some of the results you're about to see will completely challenge conventional wisdom. Our number one pick was engineered to solve a critical issue that other rounds merely dance around, especially when fired from ultra-short barrels. Once you see the data, the results speak for themselves. If you've ever been told that the 22 LR is inadequate for self-defense, our testing proves otherwise. Here, at iReview, we don't rank by reputation, we rank by performance. Before we begin, subscribe, like this video, and hit the notification bell. Drop the 22 LR round you're currently running in the comments below, and let's see if it made the list. Let's get into it, because our number 9 spot is about to raise a critical question that the rest of this countdown answers. The truth about extreme velocity, Aguila Super Maximum most 22 LR shooters are running the wrong round for the job. And it's not because they picked poorly, it's because the numbers on the box lie. We have been conditioned to believe that muzzle velocity dictates terminal performance, but gelatin and clothing barriers tell a completely different story. Sitting at the number 5 spot on the countdown is the Aguila Super Maximum, and it serves as the ultimate proof that in the world of rimfire, speed isn't free. The Aguila Super Maximum is the hypervelocity outlier of the 22 LR category. Its engineering brief is obvious. Lighten the bullet, drive it hard, flatten the trajectory, hit small game fast, and let velocity create the effect. The box specs for the current Aguila load, listed as a 30-grain copper-plated solid point. It claims a screaming 1,700 feet per second and roughly 193 foot-pounds of energy from rifle-length data. But in independent testing, the real-world rifle speed actually came in lower, averaging about 1,545 feet per second. When it hits gelatin, the effect can look visually impressive initially, but it quickly falls apart as a reliable defensive formula. One documented test showed the bullet breaking down significantly, leaving a retained stem of just 16 grains that only penetrated about 8.5 inches. As a data-driven shooter, my takeaway is that the Super Maximum represents the ultimate ballistic trade-off. Nearly half the bullet's mass disappears early in the wound track. You get extreme violence up front, but you completely sacrifice deep, straight, and boring penetration. Stinger set the hypervelocity standard back in 1977. Aguila pushed that velocity ceiling even higher. However, they paid for that speed with a much steeper fragmentation penalty that severely limits penetration depth. This creates a brilliant irony that defines the entire 22 LR performance argument in a single data point. The Super Maximum is the fastest round on this list, yet it penetrates less than the slowest purpose-built defensive round. If your goal is varmint hunting, where you want maximum trauma on a small target, this round executes its design brief perfectly. But if you are relying on it for self-defense, the data clearly shows exactly what speed costs at this extreme. If you are looking to test the absolute limits of rimfire velocity, the Aguila Super Maximum remains relatively accessible. Based on current 2026 market availability, a standard 50-round box typically retails between $6.50 and $12, which breaks down to roughly 13 to 24 cents per round. It is an affordable way to experience exactly what hypervelocity feels and costs on the range. The overlooked powerhouse, the Aguila Interceptor. Sitting at the number 4 spot on our countdown of effective rimfire rounds is a cartridge that perfectly balances weight and speed. The Aguila Interceptor. Aguila has been manufacturing ammunition since 1961, yet many American shooters discuss 22 LR as if Mexico never entered the room. The Interceptor changes that narrative completely. Instead of relying on a light hypervelocity gimmick, This round is built entirely around maintaining mass. You get a full 40-grain copper-plated solid point launched at a published 1,470 feet per second, generating 192 foot-pounds of energy. This makes it the absolute fastest 40-grain load evaluated on this list. Aguila deliberately chose not to chase a lighter bullet just to achieve higher speeds. They maintain the standard bullet weight and push the system anyway. The ballistic result of this engineering is full-weight momentum paired with hypervelocity intent. When a 40-grain 22 LR projectile moves that fast, it naturally holds its line better upon impact and carries its authority much deeper into the wound track. In my view, the Aguila Interceptor is arguably the most under-discussed balance point in the entire 22 LR category. Most American shooters have never even considered this specific load from one of the world's largest ammunition manufacturers, which is a massive oversight. When comparing it to other premium 40-grain loads in the 1,435 to 1,470 feet per second range, the CCI Velociter usually dominates the conversation due to wider domestic availability and heavily documented testing data. However, the Interceptor holds a distinct velocity edge over it and features a design lineage that most U.S. shooters simply haven't examined. The concept behind this round is excellent, but it stops at the number 4 spot primarily because its domestic documentation is not quite as deep as its competitors. If you want to test the Aguila Interceptor yourself, finding it is becoming easier. As of 2026, a standard 50-round box typically retails between $7.50 and $12, putting it roughly at 15 to 20 cents per round, depending on the vendor. Ultimately, the Interceptor offers a ballistic profile that rounds like the legendary Stinger simply cannot duplicate, and lighter hypervelocity rounds do not even attempt to achieve. It stands as a brilliant example of what happens when a manufacturer refuses to compromise on bullet mass to gain speed, making it a highly capable round that deserves serious attention. The hyper-velocity pioneer, the CCI Stinger. When we rank rimfire rounds by real ballistic performance rather than hype, the legendary CCI Stinger claims the number 3 spot. Before internet arguments about hypervelocity even existed, the Stinger defined the entire category. This round wrote the modern language of hot rimfire. Introduced in the mid-1970s, it changed what people expected from 22 LR by dropping the bullet weight to 32 grains. The Stinger pushes speed to a published 1,640 feet per second and delivers 191 foot-pounds of energy. It was engineered with a copper-plated hollow-point varmint design brief, offering a flat trajectory and aggressive upset at rifle velocities. Out of rifles, its performance gets much happier. One 10-22 test averaged 1,541 feet per second, achieving 12.5 inches of penetration and approximately 31 caliber expansion, alongside some fragmentation. The round utilizes a slightly longer case, which creates compatibility issues in tighter target chambers. However, the Stinger's intended window of performance narrows extremely fast in short pistols. Independent gel tests through denim from tiny carry pistols demonstrate that when the hollow point expands around 35 to 37 calibers, penetration averages a shallow 8.5 to 8.6 inches. Conversely, other short barrel tests revealed that if the hollow point fails to open, the bullet tumbles, resulting in 11.5 to 14 inches of penetration. If you have been running Stingers for 20 years, you picked the right round for the right reasons. The Stinger defined hypervelocity 22 LR, and every subsequent round in this category was explicitly designed in response to what it got right and where it left room for improvement. That said, the Stinger can be summarized in one sentence. It is dramatic when velocity is there and unpredictable when it isn't. While it is a devastatingly effective hunting load out of a rifle barrel, its performance out of a short-barreled defensive pistol is erratic. It relies entirely on speed, and as the data proves, speed always asks for something back. If your 22 LR lives in a rifle, it still deserves immense respect. But if you rely on a short pistol for defense, its unpredictable terminal ballistics make it a gamble compared to modern rounds designed specifically for deep penetration at lower velocities. If you are looking to stock up on the original hypervelocity reference round, availability remains strong, Based on current market trends for 2026, a standard 50-round box of CCI Stinger 22 LR generally retails between $8 and $11.50, roughly 16 to 23 cents per round, ensuring it remains a highly accessible piece of ballistic history. The balance monster, the CCI Velociter. When we look at real ballistic performance instead of hype, one cartridge dominates the conversation as the ultimate do-it-all option. Coming in at the number 2 spot on the countdown is the CCI Velociter. The Velociter is what happens when someone studies the legendary Stinger and says, "Keep the intent. Give me more bullets." CCI asked what the Stinger would look like if engineers stopped chasing the lightest bullet and instead chased retained authority. The data shows that the answer is highly impressive. It is a 40-grain copper-plated hollow point that publishes 1,435 feet per second and 183 foot-pounds of energy. It features standard 22 LR compatibility, completely avoiding the longer case quirks that the Stinger has. Out of a short pistol, the Velociter lacks the speed to expand. In a 2.4-inch barrel test, it pushed past 14 inches with absolutely no expansion. Another pocket pistol test repeatedly sent it through 16-inch blocks. When you step up to a 5-inch barrel, it wakes up, expanding to 30 caliber and reaching 12 inches of penetration. From a rifle, it acts exactly like the hunting load it was built to be, demonstrating reliable expansion and penetration. In my view, the Velociter is the absolute balance monster of the 22 LR category. It maintains the same hyper-velocity ambition as its predecessors, but uses more mass to hold its shape and carry energy deeper into the target. If you understood early on that the Velociter was the perfect balance between full weight and hyper-velocity, you understood terminal rimfire performance before most. What stands out to me is that its failure to expand in a short pistol is not a bug. It is precisely why it penetrates so effectively. However, if your 22 LR lives in a rifle, the Velociter argument is undeniably real. It hits harder at a distance and expands beautifully from a rifle barrel. With its combination of full weight and hypervelocity, it is easily the most capable general-purpose load on this list. Because this is a premium, high-performance hunting and defensive load, it sits slightly above standard plinking ammunition. As of 2026, a standard 50-round box of CCI Velociter typically retails between $10 and $13, roughly 20 to 26 cents per round. For the unmatched versatility and terminal reliability it offers across both rifles and pistols, it is worth every penny. The Mythbuster, the Federal Punch 22 LR. When we strip away the hype and rank rimfire rounds by their actual defensive capabilities from short barrels, the Federal Punch 22 LR rightfully claims the number 1 spot. The Federal Punch is accurately described as the Mythbuster of the rimfire world because its specifications sound entirely backwards compared to traditional hot rod entries. It utilizes a lighter 29-grain nickel-plated flat-nose bullet, running slower with a published velocity of 1080 feet per second, specifically 1070 feet per second from a 2-inch barrel. Federal made a deliberate engineering choice that everyone else avoided. The bullet has no hollow point and is not designed to expand or fragment. It uses a flat nose instead of a traditional round nose to ensure deep, straight-line penetration, bypassing the gamble of whether a tiny hollow point will wake up in a short barrel. In Federal's own comparisons and 10% gelatin, the punch reached 13 3/4 inches, easily outperforming a 25 auto FMJ at 12.69 inches and a 60-grain 32 auto hollow point at 8.5 inches. Independent tests validate these claims, showing 13.5 inches of penetration from a 2.4-inch Beretta 21 and about 14.5 inches from a 4.4-inch Ruger Mark IV. Furthermore, it demonstrates incredible consistency. In a 3-inch barrel test, the punch averaged an extreme spread of just 25 feet per second, compared to the Stinger's massive 93 feet per second spread. In my view, the data itself is the strongest argument for this round. For decades, the CCI Stinger has been the benchmark for 22 LR performance, relying on a 32-grain bullet, moving at an impressive 1,640 feet per second. Yet, the Federal Punch which is newer, slower, and lighter, consistently outpenetrates it in FBI protocol gelatin when fired from a pistol barrel. Personally, I find this round revolutionary for anyone relying on a pocket pistol for self-defense. It perfectly illustrates that the performance ceiling of the .22 LR cartridge is not limited by the caliber itself, but by the specific round loaded into it and the barrel length. By abandoning the pursuit of expansion and focusing purely on consistent, reliable penetration, Federal created a round that actually meets defensive standards. If you carry a short-barreled .22 LR, the Federal Punch is arguably the only round built specifically and solely for that purpose. Because of its specific engineering and specialized defensive application, the Federal Punch commands a slight premium over bulk plinking ammo, but remains incredibly affordable for defensive carry. Based on current market data, a standard 50-round box of Federal Punch .22 LR generally retails between $8.50 and $12, roughly 17 to 24 cents per round. For the unmatched, consistent penetration it offers out of short-barreled handguns, it is an exceptional value. So, does this ranking change your perspective on what the .22 LR can actually achieve, or do you still dismiss it for defensive applications? Let us know your thoughts and the exact round you're currently running down in the comments. Here at iReview, accuracy is our top priority. If you believe a specification we covered is off, drop a credible source in the comments and we will update the description. If you want more content where the data drives the conclusion, not the other way around, make sure to hit that subscribe button. For the viewers paying close attention, I buried a specific number during the Aguila Super Maximum segment that tells you everything you need to know about the velocity versus penetration trade-off. If you caught that detail about the 16 grains and the 8.5 inches, drop it in the comments below. That single comparison settles the debate. 10 rounds, 1 caliber, and the data proves that we've all been measuring the wrong metrics. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next review.